can't stand the way I live. This old song fat. Ain't got you ladies and prime time is all that.
Whoa, Dion. It's not that kind of prime time.
Yeah, man, it's primetime fantasy football on Next Level Radio.
Well, alright.
Welcome into week number 10 for primetime fantasy football on Next Level Radio. I am Adam Gorey, joined online with Joe Webster and Steve Richards. How are you gentlemen doing tonight?
Good.
I'm wonderful. I got my first 2-win week this week, so you guys can finally start to listen to me when I talk.
Yeah, my by the way, in the podcast league, my team is bad, but actually in playoff position don't deserve it at all. But yet, my other leagues, my teams have just been disappointing all year round, except for maybe one league. But anyway, I digress. Let's move on. It's week 10. We have quite a few buys again this week. The Colts, the Vikings, the Patriots, the Chargers, the Redskins, and the Texans. Some notable players: Luck, Brady, Rivers, RG3 kind of. Both running backs for the Colts, which we just saw yesterday, because we're recording this on Tuesday this week, a little early. Vereen, Oliver, and Matthews, which Ryan Matthews, supposed to be back. Oliver, real quick, I just want to get your opinion. Is Oliver droppable at this point for either of you? Joe, I guess we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think he may be, depending on what you have and how your roster's constructed. I think maybe, Ryan Matthews is obviously not the picture of health, so depending on how many roster spots you have, you may want to hold on to him just to see going into the playoffs of your fantasy league if he's going to be relevant. But if you have short benches or you're even in a 10-team league, I think he's definitely droppable.
Yeah, I think Matthews obviously takes over his number one spot. He takes it back. Oliver hasn't been overly impressive other than the first two games. But like Joe said, he's not a healthy guy. So if you have Matthews, hopefully you held on to him and waited it out. And if you have him, Oliver would be a pretty good flex option, or handcuff option. So. Yeah,
I was gonna say maybe if I had Matthews, I'd keep Oliver. Otherwise, maybe try to trade for Matthews or something if you have Oliver. But you're obviously not, from what Oliver's done the past couple weeks, you're not excited about, even if Matthews gets hurt again. So other bye week: Alfred Morris, Arian Foster, T.Y. Hilton, Reggie Wayne, Cordero Patterson, Brandon LaFell, Julian Edelman, Keenan Allen, Pierre Garçon, Deshaun Jackson, DeAndre Hopkins, and Andre Johnson. And then tight end wise, you got Gronk, Gates, and Reed. So let's start things off as we always do with the high-low. Let's recap last week's Week 9 results. First, I gave myself a yellow on Alex Smith because he got roughly 16 points. I thought he would do better than that, though. 16's, okay for if your quarterback's streaming at 199 yards and 2 touchdowns. Looked like he was going to have a great game in the first half and then kind of just, I don't know if they just played ball control or what, but the second half he really didn't do quite as much. So what do you guys think about Alex Smith this week playing against the Bills, who have a pretty decent defense?
Yeah, I think there's a number of quarterbacks, obviously, with Brady, Luck, and Rivers all on buys. He may be a guy that you're looking at, but there's a couple other guys I think I would rather probably have a little more, including now I'm blank on his name, the Buffalo quarterback.
Kyle Orton.
Yeah, Kyle Orton. I think Kyle Orton going forward is actually going to be a pretty solid quarterback if you're someone who streams quarterbacks. His last few games have been pretty solid fantasy-wise. I mean, even in Week 8, he had the bye last week, but in Week 8, he only completed 10 of 17 against the Jets. Now, granted, we know the Jets are terrible, but 4 of his completions for touchdowns. So he had 238 yards, 4 touchdowns. So I think going forward, I think he's a quarterback to look forward to, and I think I'd rather have over Alex Smith.
Yeah, it's way too early to do projections. Like Adam said, we're doing this on a Tuesday instead of a Wednesday, and I do the quarterback rankings, but I'll probably have enough guys ahead of Alex Smith that you can go ahead and pick up if you do have one of the quarterbacks that are on bye this week. So I guess go ahead and keep out a lookout for the rankings that'll come out on the site.
Yeah, I mean, the Bills and Chiefs, they actually play each other this week, each giving up only about 15 points. So I might avoid either one of them. But let's get on to Frank Gore. I got that wrong, 5.8 points. The 49ers are playing the Saints this week. I'm not sure I can trust Frank Gore just in general, but with all the buys, you might, I'm not saying you should bench him, but just don't expect much from him.
Yeah, I think you need to, temper your excitement with Frank Gore. I think he's one of those guys, because of all of those running back buys and a lot of the injuries and other things that have happened. I think he's someone you're going to, if you draft him, you're going to have trouble sitting unless you just got really lucky with some of your ads and drops and all that kind of stuff and your transactions. So you're probably going to have to roll with him. But, yeah, I agree that you're probably not expecting anything more. At this point, I think he's probably a running back 2 at best, and that's probably on the high side.
Yeah, I actually I have Frank Gore, and he's been bad for a couple weeks in a row now. So it's definitely, like you said, it's not somebody that you can really trust, and not somebody that is worth playing unless you need to play him, which you may have to do with the running back buys. But I wouldn't be excited about him, and I would try to avoid him if I could.
Yeah, Steve, you want to roll right on into your highs?
Yeah, sure. I had Kaepernick, another San Francisco guy who I was wrong on against the Rams. He only scored 10 points, had 237 yards and a touchdown, and then added 14 running yards, had 2 lost fumbles. That killed him, which included the one at the goal line, which could have been a touchdown and instead was a lost fumble, so that's an 8-point swinger. So what do you guys think this week about the 49ers trying to regroup at 4-4, their quarterback going into this week?
Well, I gotta tell you, I based on your highs this week. I had taken off a couple weeks of FanDuel, and I went in one this week, and I went with Colin Kaepernick, and the rest of my team did amazing. So I ended up still winning money, but if I would have picked another quarterback, I probably would have been in the next level up on some money. So not that I'm blaming you. I really thought Colin Kaepernick. I think I agreed with you last week. I thought he'd be on and do really well, but so I was pretty disappointed with that. I think he's got kind of he's soured on me a little bit, and especially since I own him in one of my keeper leagues, I'm a little disappointed in him this year.
Yeah, fun fact here, he only had about 2 more points than Nick Foles, who didn't play the whole game. I think he only played like a quarter. Kaepernick, I'm kind of off the Kaepernick train at this point. I don't know what they're doing over there. They don't look great offensively, and it's affecting everybody, and I don't think there's anyone on that 49ers offense you can rely on at this point. So for now, I mean, if I can, I might have to use Kaepernick in like a streaming type of league or something like that. I don't even know. But the Saints are an okay. Actually, they're a pretty good matchup. They had 19.9 points to quarterbacks roughly this year. So this week I'd be starting him, but in the long run, I don't know if he's a long-term solution for me.
I agree. And my other guy I did hit on, who was Mark Ingram. He played on Thursday night. The Thursday night running backs. He hit 100 rush yards on the number and scored 2 touchdowns, and then added 10 receiving yards for good measure for 23 points in a standard league. So that was a good one. And we talked about the other side, but they play San Francisco this week. So where do you guys stand on Mark Ingram this week?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a RB1 probably more weeks out than not. I mean, they gave him 30 rush attempts, and then he might get hurt again maybe, but until he does, you just gotta ride it. And we actually have him as far as this week's matchup. We have him in a dig it or ditch it later on, so I'll save my answer as far as how I think he's going to do this week. But long term, if you're the Mark Ingram owner, you got to be happy at this point.
Yeah, I think having some of that time off probably overall has helped him right now. He's really fresh, and I think if you're a Mark Ingram owner and you held on to him and you were patient, that's going to pay dividends going into your fantasy playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. They seem to finally have a running back, or just one running back in New Orleans, which is different, but it's good for owners. Who'd you end up with last week, and how'd you do, Joe?
I did pretty well. I had Jeremy Hill, and at the time of our podcast last week, Gio had just missed his Wednesday practice, and I think I still kind of expected Gio to play, but I thought that Jeremy Hill would be an interesting flex option because I thought that he would get more carries because of the hip injury. that Gio had, but as the week went on, he kept missing practices, and then when he was out, Jeremy Hill had a great game. One of the things I saw that he did really well was in the fourth quarter, he had like a 60-yard touchdown run. They were a little nervous, however, that he did leave the game for a short time, but it ended up being nothing to worry about. He came in, and he's got the Browns actually on Thursday night. We've talked in the past about running backs on Thursday night, and as of right now, it does not. It's Gio is doubtful, so it looks like Jeremy Hill's going to get the full workload again. So I'll start with you, Adam. What do you think of Jeremy Hill this week?
I like him. I mean, I think we have him on a dig it or ditch it too. I forgot to mention that. But yeah, I mean, Browns terrible defense. RB1 this week for me.
Yeah, I'd roll him out too. I mean, as long as if Gio doesn't play, so he's certainly worth rolling out again this week and until Gio comes back, and maybe even when he does come back.
Yeah, and then I think I agree with that. When he does come back, he still may be an interesting flex option. I think that Hill's probably proving to everybody that he deserves some carries, and as you know, Gio and Adam and I kind of went back and forth on this on Twitter the other day about Gio, and he has been very productive and he's been a solid, but I think his yards per carry has been down the last few weeks before the injury, and it's tough to put somebody on the bench who's playing that well like Jeremy Hill. So it'll be interesting going forward.
Before that specific injury, because he had gotten banged up a couple times.
Yeah, and that was part of the reason I was big on Jeremy Hill going into this week, is because I think it was 2 or 3 straight games he had missed a series or two because he was banged up a little bit. Yeah. He always was able to come back in, and I think I said it last week. I said it's just a matter of time before one of these injuries keep him out for a longer period of time. I didn't think he would miss the whole game, but I guess if it worked out, if you had him on your roster.
Right.
The other guy I had was T.Y. Hilton, who I kind of forgot I said this, but I said that I was going to put him on my high list every single week until he proved me wrong. And it wasn't spectacular, but he had another good week, 71 yards and a touchdown. So I think that would be a green light for a wide receiver. So I think he did a pretty solid night against the Giants.
You're going to put him on your high list on the bye?
What's that? Oh, yeah, he's on the bye. That's right. So that's why I didn't put him on.
Put him on your high list again?
Yeah, there you go. I told you I was going to no matter what, so I guess I'm glad I forgot about that. But so yeah, I think I'll say the same thing I did last week. I think going forward, T.Y. Hilton's a wide receiver number 1, and you've got to just keep rolling him out there.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
So let's get on to this week's highs. I have Steve Smith Sr. Playing up against the Titans. Titans are not a good team. They're at the bottom in the league of time of possession. Help if I could talk, I guess. Bottom of the league in time of possession. Now, Steve Smith has had a couple low weeks in a row. I think last week he only had about 3.5 points. The week before that, about the same. I look for him to have a good week this week, a bounce back week. Because the Titans don't have a lot of time of possession, that means more opportunity for the entire Ravens offense. So I actually kind of like Flacco in this one as well, and Justin Forsett. I just think, more time of possession equals more opportunity for the offense to put up some points. And I think you see Steve Smith get some good yardage this week and maybe add a touchdown in there. I also have Devonta Adams, the guy that I kind of not stole from Joe, but we put on the same list here against the Bears. For me, the Bears give up as many points per game as the Jaguars. Most of the yardage they give up is going to be through the air. I figure Cobb and Jordy are givens considering they're the 1 and 2, but I think Adams could be a very good bye week fill-in this week. So, Steve, I guess we'll get your opinion on those two, Joe, and then we'll just get your opinion on Steve Smith because we'll let you give your Devonta Adams talk a little bit later. So, I guess, Joe, if you want to give your Steve Smith, and then we'll go into Steve so he can roll into his highs.
Yeah, I mean, everything you said about Steve Smith is right on about the Titans not being a good team. But when I just look at what Steve Smith has done the last few weeks, I am worried about him. I think since week 4, his receiving numbers have gone down every single week. So he had 7 receptions in 4, then 5, 3, and then I guess they did go up last week to 5. But he hasn't posted 100-yard games since week 6. And like you said, the last 2 weeks he's only had 3.5 points. But I do agree. I think he's doing with all the wide receivers on the bye. I don't think you're sitting him probably for anybody else, but I'm not as confident as you to put him on my high list. So I'll be interested to see how he does.
Yeah, the targets are still there, which is good.
Yeah, the targets are still there, which is a good thing.
Yeah, I think you can only keep Steve Smith down for so long just because he's such a competitor and, he loves to prove people wrong and things like that. So, and like you said, the Titans aren't very good. So I think Steve Smith is a good pick. And speaking of good picks against the Titans, my first high is Justin Forsett, the running back for Baltimore. And I don't know if he's a fringe guy or not at this point, if people are thinking about starting him or not starting him. That's kind of who we try to pick in these high-low segments. But I like the matchup against the Titans this week, so I would definitely start him if you have him. I think they'll be ahead early. And like you said, a lot of time of possession. That's a good stat by you, Adam. And I think that means that they'll control the ball, run the ball, and be ahead early. And I think he could be the reason that they get ahead early, just because of the threat that he is out of the backfield and things like that, as far as passing it goes. So he's a dual threat guy and a guy that could be due for a bunch of all-purpose yards. And if he gets in the end zone, that's just bonus. My second guy is the quarterback out in Arizona, who was traded for a 7th-round pick, Carson Palmer. The Cardinals are rolling right now. They just keep winning. And they're putting up good offensive numbers to do it, which is a good thing for fantasy owners. And they're even better at home. And they've been winning even on the road, but they're even better at home. And this week they play St. Louis. I took a quarterback against the Rams last week, and it didn't work, but I think that said more about Kaepernick than it did about the Rams, like we mentioned, that the 49ers don't really know where they're going right now. I think Carson Palmer is a prime bye-week replacement. I think he might be the best bye-week replacement you have, and you might even be using him as a starter if you have maybe your stream option is Carson Palmer and Colin Kaepernick. You're starting Carson Palmer more often than Kaepernick at this point for me. So, and definitely this week. So I'm at Justin Forsett and Carson Palmer, and we'll start with Adam and what you think about him.
Yeah, like I said, with Steve Smith, I mean, it kind of reverberates down to Justin Forsett. I like him this week. Just, those Flacco, Steve Smith, and Forsett I like a lot this week. And then Palmer, yeah, I mean, he's a great bye-week fill-in. And, last week he threw for 3 touchdowns. I think he threw for about 250 yardage-wise, something like that. I mean, he's been playing well with Floyd not doing much of anything. So I think they get Floyd more involved. That helps Palmer even more. And I think Joe has Floyd on a list, so I won't go too deep into that. But Joe, what do you think about Palmer and Forsett?
Yeah, I mean, I love Palmer, and and at this point now, no one drafted him to be a quarterback number 1, but I think going forward, he is a quarterback number 1. So I think if you picked him up or got him in a trade or anything like that, you really need to, unless you were someone like a Tom Brady owner who got frustrated at the beginning of the year, and I'm in one of the leagues where I did this. I was frustrated with Tom Brady, but I just felt like I couldn't drop him, so I picked up Carson Palmer. And at this point now, I'm obviously starting Tom Brady over Carson Palmer, but there were a few weeks I had Palmer. Now, Steve, I will be looking at your rankings because I'm in a situation where I drafted Matt Ryan as my only quarterback and then picked up Palmer. And I love Matt Ryan. That's an interesting one. Yeah, and this weekend, Matt Ryan's got a really good matchup against Tampa Bay.
Yeah, he sure does.
So going forward, to be honest with you, I looked at the schedule. I think most weeks I am going to end up starting Carson Palmer, but this may be one of the weeks where I actually roll with Matt Ryan coming off a bye. Going in there. So I'll be anxious to see your rankings when they come out. But I love that. And then the Forsett, I agree with everything you guys say. And don't have too much to add to that. So I think I'll just move on.
Carson Palmer, real quick, Carson Palmer or Mark Sanchez?
Carson Palmer.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm not sold on Mark Sanchez at all.
Okay. Yeah, we'll talk about him a little bit later.
I think we could talk about him a little later. I could give you some of my opinions on that, but I'll go into my guys right away. I'll start with Davante Adams since Adam had him on his list as well. You said pretty much everything I was going to say, Adam, so I'll go with a tweet that I read from Evan Silva today, who is a big fantasy football guy. He said Davante Adams' snap rates right now over the last 3 games were 78%, 79%, and the last game he played was 96%. And he's had 70-plus yards or a TD in 4 straight games. So the Bears' defense is bad, and I think all 3 Packers wide receivers could have a good game. So obviously, if you have Jordy Nelson or Cobb, they're your number 1 or number 2 at worst. But if you've got a flex spot and you're wondering who to put in there, I think Davante Adams, just like you said, is going to be a really solid flex play this week. And then the other guy I went with was Terrence West. I think most of us wrote him off a few weeks ago because everybody was on the Isaiah Crowell bandwagon, including myself. And then, for whatever it was worth, a couple tweets came out from somebody this week, and I can't remember who it was, who said, don't be surprised if Terrence West has more carries this week than Ben Tate. And that was, I think, Saturday or Sunday he tweeted that out, and it ended up being true. So Obviously, Ben Tate's not doing great. And I just think against the Cincinnati defense, Cincinnati is solid, but I think Terrence West is the guy there. And with everybody on a bye, I'd expect him to have a pretty solid week. So, Adam, I'll start with you. What do you think? We already know about Devontae Adams. What do you think of Terrence West this week?
I hate the Devontae Adams pick.
Yeah.
No, I don't know how I feel about the Terrence West pick. I think that's like a revolving door down there in Cleveland with their running backs. And I mean, you were low on Ben Tate last week because of the center, so I can't imagine I could be that much higher on Terrence West. It's not like he has a center and Ben Tate doesn't. But honestly, I don't know if I can trust him at this point yet. I'm not saying that maybe, over the next couple weeks he gets that starting spot. But until somebody emerges as the definite starter, I don't know that I'm touching anybody in that revolving door. Steve, what about you?
Yeah, I don't know if I even went over the Devontae Adams. I think I skipped over it as well. But we can talk about it now that it's a good pick for sure. And like it said, all three Packers wide receivers should have good weeks this week. It's not often that there's room for three different wide receivers, but when Aaron Rodgers is the one throwing it, there's plenty to go around. And it's perfectly plausible that all three of them catch a touchdown and have a bunch of yards. So Devontae Adams is a good pick for everything that you guys have been saying. I kind of fall on Adams' side as far as Terrence West goes. Yes. I'm just not sure that I can trust any of the Browns running backs at this point. I said last week was a show-me week a bit for Ben Tate, and he showed absolutely nothing. And that's because Terrence West had more carries, like you said, Joe. But their line seems to not be good. Somehow they keep winning games, but it's not really because of anything that I can see standing out fantasy-wise. So I'm not sure they're going to win this week, and I'm not sure that Terrence West is going to be on a high list. But it's a bold pick, so if it works, then good for you.
I'll be honest, I was looking for something that just wasn't so obvious. I thought there was a lot of running backs this week that had pretty solid matchups, so I was looking for somebody that I thought could end up being maybe a top 15 guy that is not going to be ranked in the top 15, and he's who I chose to go with, so we'll see how it works out.
Yeah,
that was such a not obvious pick that it's a terrible pick.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
No,
I think I was riding on my high of being the only one who had two greens in the high. So
yeah,
I got a little cocky.
I will say if anybody in that backfield could have a good week, and it's not a good matchup either. I mean, I forgot to mention that Cincinnati's not a great matchup. But if anybody in that backfield would have a good week, to me, I guess it would be Terrence West. If I had,
and it's the Thursday night games. That's kind of why I went with the third him as well. So.
He's a lesser of three evils.
Yeah. By the way, before we move on, because this wasn't in our notes, so I just want to make sure that it was pointed out there because I put last week on Twitter, if any of our listeners, Adam, you tweeted out, make a big, bold prediction for this Sunday. I just want to see, how did I work out with my Ryan Tannehill prediction about being a top 5 quarterback?
I don't know.
I didn't.
I assume he was in the top 10, but we'll get to him because I have him on a list.
Oh, I didn't see it. I'm sorry. I got a little early.
You're not going to like it either.
All right. Well, that was only for last week, but okay.
We'll talk about our lows now
good.
from week 9. Jonas Gray, I had only 3 points, so I got a green light on that one. He's on a bye. Chris Ivory I had as well. He got 2.2 points, so I got a green light on that as well. Chiefs have yet still to give up a rushing touchdown. The Jets play the Steelers this week. Either of you liking Ivory? Chris Johnson was the guy last week, so it's kind of weird that they're going back to Chris Johnson now at this point.
Yeah, I have no idea what they're thinking. I thought Chris Ivory was looking pretty solid, but I guess if you're a Chris Ivory owner, you got to be a little worried going forward. But I have no idea what to think of that situation, to be honest with you. I'd like to see what comes out a little bit more this week in practice and see what the coaches have to say. So right now it's a little too early for me to give a definitive answer on Ivory, but I think I just don't believe that they're going to just now all of a sudden go with Chris Johnson from here on out. So I still think Chris Ivory's the guy you want to have going forward.
Yeah, I still wouldn't touch Chris Johnson. I don't think it is frustrating for Chris Ivory owners, certainly. I think I was watching PTI, I think, the other day, and Kornheiser says that the Jets is where quarterbacks go to die, and obviously Sanchez is proving that a little bit. But I think entire offenses go to die, and for the Jets right now, it's kind of tough to trust any of them. But Ivory might be your best option, even with Percy Harvin going over there and having a good week last week. But it's tough. It's kind of a matchup play at this point, I think, for me with Chris Ivory. and you kind of have to guess at it, which is the worst part.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think if you're picking one, you're still going Ivory. I just don't think they're going to stick with Chris Johnson. I think maybe he just, for the Chiefs defense, maybe he just matched up better against them. So, Steve, let's go on to your lows. And I didn't have it written in here because I was doing this before the Monday night game last night. But Odell Beckham Jr. ended up with 16 points, so I'm going to have to give you a big fat red on that one.
Yeah, he ended up with a whole shit ton of garbage points.
Yeah, it was all garbage.
Yeah, but he ended up with 156 yards. He's got talent, so it doesn't matter when the talent comes. That's a that's a red no matter what. I'm not 100% on who the Giants play this week. Oh well, good luck.
I have him in a list as well. So
okay,
oh,
so we don't need to, so we'll skip over that one. Jerick McKinnon was my other. I actually got a green on that one. He ended up with 54 rush yards and 14 receiving yards because Matt Asiata scored 3 touchdowns. So if one of the touchdowns went his way, then it wouldn't have went as well. But he just got unlucky, it seemed like. So that's the way that went for him.
That's the way the cookie crumbles. Yeah, he's obviously not their goal line back. And you know what? With the whole thing with Peterson, and we'll talk about that a little later, but I might actually be, if I can, selling him, for what I can get for him, because I don't know. I mean, there's a chance that in a few weeks he might not be worth anything.
McKinnon, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, especially with Peterson. The news that came out today with Peterson. So,
Joe, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think selling right now may be a good idea. Maybe if you can get him, if you're a McKinnon old owner, I would hold on to him. Obviously, I'd like to see him. I think obviously Peterson's not going to play this week, and if McKinnon can have a big game maybe this week, and not have Asiata get all those touchdowns, maybe you can sell him for a little higher. Unfortunately, McKinnon's not going to be the goal line back, so anytime he gets close, Asiata has proved. I mean, that was his third 3-touchdown game of his career. So he is somebody that when he gets close, when they're inside the goal or the 5-yard line, 10-yard line, they're going to give the ball to him. So
yeah. Well, they're both they're on a bye this week, so
yeah. So
okay.
McKinnon's not going to have a good week this week either.
So depending on when your trade deadline is, maybe you can wait to have him play another good game, but it may be too late as well. Because I agree that once AP comes back, McKinnon may it's really a cloudy thing, and we'll have to wait to see what the news is with the NFL and what they're going to do with Adrian Peterson going forward.
Right. So how about your lows, Joe?
I had Nick Foles, and obviously we don't do anything for that because he was injured during the first or early second quarter. He had 8 points in the short time he played. If you watch that game, he had a absolutely perfect toss to Macklin, but then a drive or two later threw off his back foot right to the other team. So it's hard to say where he would have ended up. I do believe that I probably would have ended up with a red. I think he would have gotten enough. It just seems like with the way Eagles are passing, that their quarterback is always going to put up at least numbers to give us a yellow in our rankings, where they're close to 20, just not quite there. So, but either way, it didn't work out this week. And then my other guy I had was Ben Tate, and even though I went with Terrence West this weekend, I outlined that Ben Tate lost his center, and the running game just wasn't the same. And Ben Tate lost a lot of carries to Terrence West, so. Going forward, I think we already just talked about it. I think Terrence West is probably the guy you want to have. So, to be honest, I think Ben Tate may even be a little irrelevant to talk about at this point. I'm not sure if you guys think that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a point in a few weeks you could see him being droppable.
Yeah, I think I think it could be more Isaiah Crowell may not be completely out of the picture yet. I mean, Ben Tate could even be the third guy in that.
He could be the Doug. Yeah, he could be the Doug Martin of the Cleveland Browns.
Really? Absolutely.
So let's go on to our picks for this week. I'm going to start off with a kind of bold one. Drew Brees versus the Niners. They give up the least amount of passing yards per game defensively. They've given up 14 touchdowns all year, which I think is about 1.5. It's under 2, I know that. Brees has been throwing over 300 yards a lot this season, but with them giving up the least amount, this could be one of those games he goes under 300, and I don't think you're going to count on more than 2 touchdowns in this game. He's only thrown for 3 touchdowns once this entire season. So with them giving up less than 2 average, I think he gets about 2 and maybe about 250 to 275 yards. I'm not great at math, but I think that would give me the green light, especially for Drew Brees. So, and then I also got Trey Mason at the Cardinals. they're still kind of committee-ish, even though he got most of the carries this week. You saw him get a lot of carries, and then the following week he didn't get as many carries. So this is a good run defense as well. They haven't given up over 80, or their average, I should say, is under 80 a game. And they've only given up 4 rushing touchdowns the entire season. And what doesn't help him is he's not a threat in the passing game. So this week he's going to end up being touchdown dependent. And like I said, with them only giving up 4 all year, his odds aren't great. So I actually think it might be a good day for Cunningham, if anybody in that backfield, just because he is a threat out of the backfield. So I think that helps him against this Cardinals defense. So Joe, we'll start with you. What do you think about Drew Brees and Trey Mason?
I actually like Trey Mason, just not this week. And I think that whatever they're doing in St. Louis, it just sounds like they're not. Maybe it's just more of a thing they're telling it the reporters and things like that. But it just seems like they're not exactly sure who's going to get the most carries week to week and all that kind of stuff. But I agree. The Cards are a good defense. They are just really red hot right now, the entire team. They're playing in Arizona. I just think the Cardinals are going to really – I think they're also the Rams are coming off a pretty big high on beating the Niners. I kind of think this is going to be a blowout with the Cards beating them. And I agree with Trey Mason not being a factor in the passing game. He could be pretty bad. Drew Brees, I'm never going to vote against him, so I'm going to disagree with you. I think he's going to at least throw up 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. So I don't think I'd ever. I mean, I commend you. That's a bold pick to put him up there, but I'll never vote against Drew Brees against anybody. To be honest with you, I think he'll just do what he pleases.
Steve.
For me, I think Trey Mason is a good pick, or any of the Rams running backs really is a good pick. They just don't really know what they're doing. And like you said, the Cardinals defense is awfully good. So I guess maybe, I don't know, if Cunningham has a better day, then good for you, but I don't think any of them are really going to have a good day. So I think that's a good pick, and not really much more needs to be said. I think we need to set a number for Drew Brees if you're going to go low. I think Drew Brees is in a different category as far as high-low goes,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I agree, because if he gets 20 points even, we may have called that green for most quarterbacks. For Drew Brees, you probably call that yellow.
Yellow, yeah. I say definitely under 20. I would say less than 18.
Is it green for you?
Probably 18 or less, maybe. Definitely less than 20. It depends. What do you guys want to set it at? Because, I think he gets around 17 or 18 points this week. I'll set it at 18 if you want.
I'll take the over.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll give you 18, and if you get that, then that's a good call and good for you.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Joe said. He's just proven at this point. I think he's kind of matchup proof. But if he has an off game, then you called it. So that's your good.
Like I said, only 3 touchdowns once this whole year.
Yeah, that is a surprising stat. I didn't know that was a thing. I guess I haven't really been following Drew Brees.
Which means he's due.
Yeah, well, I think it has a lot to do with. You saw they gave Ingram the ball 30 times, and he had 2 touchdowns. So I think that is hurting his value.
Yeah, in years past, when they were in the 5-yard line or closer, they were still passing it because of Jimmy Graham and all that stuff. And I don't know if it's just because they didn't have a running back they trusted, but you're right. This year they've had a lot more rushing touchdowns from 5 yards or closer, whereas years past they would just pass the ball. So.
Let me ask you this: if you could sell Drew Brees on the name alone and get a decent amount for him, would you do it? Because I actually think you could sell him on his name alone, and I don't think he's going to be a top 5 quarterback for you the rest of the year.
Here's why it's difficult, and we're having this issue. I'm in a 12-man league where someone drafted Russell Wilson and Drew Brees. And this is when Russell Wilson was actually doing really well. The last few weeks he wasn't. And he was trying to trade Drew Brees because he thought on name alone. But there are so many good quarterbacks that are putting up good numbers.
Yeah, that's a good
it's
point.
hard to trade a really good quarterback and get something back because everybody can say, well, I'll just get Carson Palmer.
Right.
And almost score as many points but not have to give up that running back or that receiver. So
that's a good point.
If you can do it and you have a solid backup, go for it. I just think there's so many good quarterbacks that put up 20 to 25 points a week. You're not going to be able to get much for them.
Like Josh McCown. I will talk about him later.
Exactly. There you go.
Steve, who do you got?
I started with Le'Veon Bell, who again was a little bit of a bold pick. You're probably going to start him if you have him anyway. Not exactly a fringe guy, but somehow the Jets are still considered good against the run. They're terrible, but I guess fantasy-wise they don't give up too many points to running backs, so... the Steelers are getting away from the run. They've thrown 80-plus times in the last 2 games, and Roethlisberger has 12 touchdowns. And I'm sure that's people that have listened to this podcast know all that stuff. But I would see more of the same here just because the Jets are so bad against the pass and they're still pretty good against the run. So I think Le'Veon Bell is due for another down week. He was not good at all last week on Sunday night. And I see kind of more of the same just because they can expose the secondary again. My other guy is another running back who's been underwhelming, Andre Williams. Again, they play in Seattle. Good luck there. Since he's been the lead back, I think he's had less than 3 yards per carry. I didn't actually look that up, so that could be wrong, but I think that's the number. But either way, he's been underwhelming for sure. And Jennings will have his job back whenever he decides to come back, but it shouldn't be this week. I don't think they're calling for. Seattle won't be any reprieve at all for Andre Williams or that offensive line, run blocking wise. I think you can go ahead and get rid of Andre Williams just because his matchup this week is against Seattle, and Jennings is supposed to come back next week. So I think Andre Williams is droppable. You can go ahead and get out ahead of it and try to get somebody in maybe Alfred Blue or something and project toward the future a little bit with getting rid of Andre Williams. So where are you guys at on Le'Veon Bell and on Andre Williams?
Yeah, I mean, Andre Williams, they really miss Rashad Jennings on that offense, and it shows. And I think if you're a Rashad Jennings owner, you're going to be rewarded when he comes back because I think they're going to try and get him the ball a lot because you've seen what Andre Williams can't do, and I think that's shooting fish in a barrel to put him on a low list this week. I think that's money in the bank. Le'Veon Bell, I'm going to disagree with actually, only because he's involved in the passing game. He might not have a great game on the ground running the ball, but I think he can still get it done through the air, and you saw that happen a few times this year. So I'm going to disagree. I think Le'Veon Bell still has a good week, but Andre Williams I think is definitely a great pick. Joe?
I'm in Adam's camp for Le'Veon Bell. I think. You said it, Steve, when you said you're still not sitting him. So I think it's a good bold pick, but I think he'll be able to do some damage enough in the air through the passing game and through the running game. Especially with what you've seen the Steelers do over the last few weeks. I think they're going to get back to running the football a little bit more this week. Although, the pick is also good just because we know how bad the Jets are in their secondary. They're probably the worst secondary in the league, and that's saying a lot coming from an Eagles fan who watches that each week. So it wouldn't surprise me, again, if they just go heavily on the pass, but I'll probably disagree with that. And then Andre Williams, I think you're exactly right. Andre Williams has had 5 catches all year, and this is an offense that's predicated on short, quick passing, and the running back is supposed to be able to play a big role in that, and Andre Williams just is not a pass catcher. So if you're a patient Jennings owner and Week 11 he comes back, I think he's going to be fresh, and hopefully you're in contention for the playoffs and he can carry it through there. So I do like that pick, and I agree with you. He may even be droppable at this point, or maybe if you have him, try to trade him to the Rashad Jennings owner as a handcuff, because that may not be the worst thing to have for him.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
My guys this week, I have Odell Beckham Jr. One reason, because he's playing Seattle. I actually really like Odell Beckham going forward rest of season. But this week against Seattle, I think it's going to be tough. It's mostly a gut call to me. Obviously, I think Seattle's good, and I just have a feeling after the week that he just had this week, even though it was in garbage time, that the Seattle defense is going to want to make sure that they shut him down. So long term, I like him, but short term this week, I think if you have a better option, I go with him. And then my running back, I went with a guy that's probably going to be in everybody's top 5 or 10. I went with Jamal Charles because he's playing Buffalo. Obviously, if you have Jamal Charles, you're not sitting him based on my evaluation. But he has a really tough matchup. And believe it or not, there's only one running back that has been over 100 yards this season against the Bills. Do you guys know which one?
I'm going to guess DeMarco Murray. Have they played the Bills?
If they have, he is not, because
okay.
I don't believe they have.
They
no.
must not have played him.
No.
LaShawn McCoy playing.
Stephen Ridley.
No. The answer
Chris
is
Ivory.
Jerick McKinnon.
That was close.
Yeah.
So now, if you go and look at who they played, I'll be honest with you, the Buffalo Bills have not faced any terror or really great running backs since Week 1, when they were able to hold Matt Forte to a lower number, under 100 yards. So I recognize Jamal Charles is still going to be in your lineup, but my bold prediction I'm putting out there, he's not going to put up running back 1 numbers this week. He'll be a 2 at best.
Ooh.
But you still probably won't be too upset by that.
Yeah, I think we have him on a dig it or ditch it or something. Or no, we have him on a take your pick, so that'll be fun.
What do you think of Odell Beckham?
I'll save my opinion on Charles until then. Odell Beckham, I'm actually going to disagree because I think he's just Eli's target. I mean, you could see what happened last week, happened this week again. They could get down and you could just get garbage points. But you're not relying on that, obviously. But I like him as like a low-end wide receiver, too, this week.
I don't know. Maybe because I had him last week, so maybe it's part of learning my lesson or something. But he seems to be the only trustworthy target they have at this point, and that's all garbage points. Does Sherman just play one side? Like, if they move Odell Beckham around?
Usually,
yeah. So if Sherman's not going to follow him, then he's he can kind of run free a little bit in that secondary. They play him in the slot a lot. Sherman doesn't play the slot all that often anyway. So I think, like you said, garbage points, which is exactly what he did to me last week in my low list. So we'll see what happens. I don't think the Giants are going to be even close to winning that game, or it'll be worth watching, but Odell Beckham could end up with 100 yards just because they're out of it by halftime.
Hey everybody, Ben Beck from Next Level, inviting you to join myself and Adam Gorey every Sunday for another episode of The Showcast. We bring you the best stories in pop culture, the newest stories in film and television, as well as movie reviews, what's going to be released in DVD, as well as coming to the box office for the weekend, and much, much more. All you have to do is search Next Level Radio under the iTunes Store and subscribe, or simply go to our website, www.nextlevelradioonline.com, and you can find our current shows as well as all of our past shows right there on the website. So we hope you join us every Sunday for another new episode of The Showcast.
Thanks for listening to Primetime Fantasy Football. Send your questions into primetime@nextlevelradioonline.com. primetime@nextlevelradioonline.com. And make sure to check out our weekly rankings, nextlevelradioonline.com, and go to the Primetime Fantasy Football tab. We'll post a link on Twitter and Facebook at NXT Level Radio or facebook.com/nextlevelradioonline.
Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Joe Minoso from NBC Chicago Fire. You're listening to Next Level Radio.
He was a no one, a 0-0. Now he's a hunter. He's a hero.
Prime time, fantasy football's 0 to hero.
0 to hero, just like that.
Okay, so for week 9, 0 to hero, I had Marshawn Lynch, had 26 points. He obviously gave me the green light on that one. We just kind of mentioned a few minutes ago they play the Giants this week. So real quick, guys, what do you think about Marshawn Lynch? I'm going to say probably low-end RB1 again this week. Or I shouldn't say again because he was obviously high-end last week, but I say he's at least like top 8 running backs.
Yes, I agree. I think he's got, I don't know if he's got a bunch of good matchups coming up, and that's why he wasn't performing earlier in the year, because all of his bad matchups were earlier in the year, but this is 2 in a row for him where he should rack up the points for sure. I know they got a lot of home games coming up, so that's always a good thing too.
Yeah, I agree. In one of my leagues, I tried to trade for him last week, trying to get in before the Oakland game, but the owner obviously was smart to look at his schedule going forward, and I thought maybe I could get him a little lower than it would have been a couple weeks ago, but I was unable to do so, but I agree. I think he's going to be a good guy going forward.
Steve, you had Gio Bernard. He didn't play last week. He's probably not going to play this week. Joe, you have LaShawn McCoy.
Yeah, I think McCoy. It looks like this run game for the Eagles is finally starting to come around. They should be getting Evan Mathis this week. So 4 out of the 5 linemen will be ready to go. Unfortunately, they lost Todd Hermans. They put him on IR today for a bicep injury, and he'll need surgery. But I think last week, if you watch the game, when the Eagles had the 4 straight run plays that basically just went right down Houston, right down the field on Houston, that was actually the first drive that Todd Hermans was out of the game, and they had Gardner in at right guard. So I think Gardner is a suitable fill-in. I don't think he's as good as Hermans, but I think he can do a solid job. And I think McCoy it just seems to be running the ball a little better, hitting the holes a little better, and I think for whatever reason, when Sanchez came in, they started running the ball more. So hopefully going forward, this is going to be good news for McCoy owners.
Yeah, I agree. And I gave you the green because it was all on the ground. There was no touchdown in there. It was all natural. So, yeah, I like him going forward. And I think I believe I heard a stat that he has now had 4 straight games of 80-plus rushing yards, and I think that's the first time in his career he's ever done that. So
and
he's
the
on the
TDs are gonna come. They have to.
Yeah, I think he only still has 1 rushing touchdown this year, so that's going to change.
Yep, I said he was a great buy low candidate last week, and nothing's changed other than the fact he might not be a buy low candidate anymore. But his schedule is ever improving, and Evan Mathis is the most important part of that line.
Yeah.
He's the best run blocker that the Eagles have, so they'll be able to run right behind him, and you see McCoy's numbers just go up and up, I think.
Yeah, I agree. So let's go on to Week 10 picks. Steve and I have the same guy, so we'll talk about why we have him, and then we'll let Joe talk about him and go right into his 0 to hero pick for this week. So Steve and I both have Jason Witten at Jacksonville. He's been disappointing all year, but I think this week he gets on the tight end 1 radar. He only has 2 touchdowns this year, but his targets have been there, especially the past couple weeks with Whedon in there. And even if Romo does end up playing for some reason, I still think he gets the targets. It's just a great matchup. So, Steve, your reasoning?
Yeah, I don't see Romo playing, like you said, and the Weed Man is the check down king. Des Bryant is not excited about it, but Jason Witten is getting all the targets and getting all the catches. He's prime territory for the check down, so I see a vintage game. He's definitely having a down year, but I could see a vintage type game and having him heavily featured into the game plan against a bad Jacksonville team, whether it's in London or not.
Yeah, that's right. This game is in London. Joe, what your thoughts on the situation with Jason Witten, and then talk about your 0 to hero for the week.
All right, well, hey, Witten's playing Jacksonville, so in my book, it's a guy that you're probably going to want to get into your lineup. Most times, if you have a guy in your team playing Jacksonville, play him. So I like that pick, and I like what Steve said with Weed Man, as he calls him, the Weed Man. He does like to check down a lot, and I think that's really good for Witten. So I think that's a good pick. My pick this week, I went with Michael Floyd against St. Louis. St. Louis actually did pretty solid against San Francisco last week. But most of all, St. Louis is not that great of a defense. It's not the defense that we remember from last year. And I just got to believe that with the offense playing as well as they are, the Cardinals' offense, I should say, and Palmer just hitting on all cylinders and everything's going well. Ellington has just been a really good back as of late. Michael Floyd's going to get his numbers again soon. And I think it's going to be this weekend at home against St. Louis. Adam, what do you think?
Yeah, I would agree. I just think maybe defenses have been taking him away a little bit, and you've seen Brown and Fitzgerald reap the benefits of that. So I think teams will start paying more attention to them again, and Floyd's going to open up, and he's going to be fine. So if you're a Floyd owner, I'm not too worried. Steve?
Yeah, I have Carson Palmer on a high list, so somebody's got to do well, and I don't see any reason why Michael Floyd can't be that guy. So I actually like everything that you guys have said, and I think Michael Floyd has a chance to have just as good a week as Carson Palmer does.
Beautiful. So
I read a stat. So let me ask you guys something. So is Michael Floyd, is he the number 1 there, or is Larry Fitzgerald the number 1?
That's tough because before the season started, Floyd, hands down. I'm still gonna say Floyd though. I don't. It's just been the past couple weeks, Fitzgerald, but I still think it's Floyd. They could be co-1A and 1B.
Yeah, that's kind of what I saw an interesting stat, and I have to look it up and give you guys the link to it. But some stat I saw with St. Louis defense is that they're ranked. I don't even know how they figure this all out. Their guys are way smarter than me, obviously, but they're the 20th ranked defense against number 1 receivers, but they're the last ranked defense against number 2s. So when I saw that, I thought it's either going to be Floyd, one of these guys, Floyd or Fitzgerald, is going to have a hell of a day.
That's good for somebody.
It's going to be, and even a 20th in the league is still below average, so it could be both of them. But I ended up going Michael Floyd because I just think he's due.
Yeah, I think that all that matters is where they line up. So if they're moving them around, then that big play could come Michael Floyd's way instead of Larry Fitzgerald's way.
Yeah, Fitz has 7 more targets this season than Floyd. So
was Floyd hurt?
No.
I think he got hurt during the Eagles game, and if he didn't miss any time, I think he may have almost been like a decoy. He was barely targeted during that game.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I can't even go too much into the target thing just because when Palmer was out, I mean, you got to throw that out the window kind of. So it's more of looking at, I don't have it in front of me, but it's more looking at the targets they've had when Palmer's been in.
That's true.
So let's go on to Don't Buy the Hype. Last week, I had Martavis Bryant. I don't have his numbers directly in front of me, but I know he got another 2 touchdowns, which I said last week that he probably wouldn't. So I got a red on that one. For this week, they play the Jets. We've talked about it. Long term, week in and week out, I'm not too confident in starting him. By the way, he had 16 points last week. He only had 44 receiving yards, so obviously the 2 touchdowns is what got him up there. But this week, I mean, what did Roethlisberger throw? 6 touchdowns each of the last 2 weeks. He could throw another 4 or 5 this week against that Jets defense. So I'm okay sliding him in this week. I think he could be a decent fill-in.
I would agree, 100%. There's guys like Hilton and Wayne on bye. LaFell's been hot, right? Deshaun Jackson, guys like that. So I was high on him when you guys weren't last week. So you don't have to convince me. I think he's a good pick.
Joe?
Yeah, thanks for throwing us under the bus there, Steve. I was just going to ask if any of you guys know how to do any of you guys know how to make a crow noise? Because I'll eat some of that right now. I remember I'm sitting in the exact same spot I sat last week, and I remember saying to you guys, listen, he threw 6 touchdowns. It's not going to happen again. That's the reason. Somebody had to catch all of those passes.
It happened again.
The first quarterback to ever do it. I was pretty positive it would never happen again. But so I'm all in. I made a mistake. Bryant's actually the real gut deal, I think. This seems to happen most years where Ben Roethlisberger kind of starts off slow and everything, and then by the end of the season, he's like a borderline quarterback 1.
Yeah.
Towards the way he plays towards the end of the season. So if he continues this trend, which I think at least he'll do this weekend against the Jets, Bryant could put up those kinds of numbers again. The only thing that would scare me with Bryant and Roethlisberger this week is that they get out to such a big lead so quick that they really rely more on Le'Veon Bell, and they get away from the passing game. But
they threw a 40-yard touchdown on 4th and 2 last week against the Ravens in the 4th quarter. So
I didn't see that. All right, so then throw that right out the window. They're going to throw all day.
Yeah.
All right, so Steve, who did you have last week?
I had Emmanuel Sanders, and this will be the last time I ever have any Denver Bronco ever on any low-type list. I think this is the fourth week in a row that I've had a Bronco somewhere, and I've gotten it wrong for 4 weeks in a row. He had 151 yards.
Peyton Manning on your low list this week.
Yeah, against the Raiders. That's a good idea. Now, I said the Seahawks might score 100 points last week. The Broncos might actually score 100 points this week.
Legitimately.
Yeah. So, Emmanuel Sanders, I don't know if it even has to be said or talked about.
No.
Certainly not in length, but
no.
Another big week for him. Yeah,
you're fine with him. QB. Wider. He might be a QB too. He can throw it, I think. Wide receiver, bottom end wide receiver 1, definitely high end wide receiver 2 every week.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I had Lorenzo, the Italian Lorenzo Taliaferro. He had 7 rushes for 21 yards against the Steelers, and he had 3 catches for 34 yards. So somewhere in the 5-point some range. So again, we kind of talked about it last week that he's really a touchdown dependent guy, and you just really can't count on when they're going to get close enough and use him in the goal line situation. So, if you have that many guys on a bye and you have to play him this weekend, maybe you'll get lucky, but hopefully you've got enough guys that you aren't just preying on a touchdown dependent guy. So I agree with that assessment going forward that he's just touchdown dependent. You really can't trust him.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, he's even got a good matchup this week, and it's just not going to work.
Yeah, which is why I like your pick for with your running back with
Forsett.
Yeah,
Forsett. Yep,
the other guy. So let's go on to this week's picks. This is where Joe's probably going to disagree. Maybe not. Ryan Tannehill for my 0 to hero, or for my don't buy the hype this week. I think he had like 28 points last week. So good job, Joe, on your bold prediction on Twitter.
Thank you.
Follow him at JoeyWebb32. My bold
I think
prediction.
Joe already knew the answer when he asked the question, right? Asked the question.
Just want to make sure you guys knew the answer.
My bold prediction did not come true. I think I had Vic getting 20 points, and he did not. Although he did get hurt. So, Steve, I think yours was pretty close. You had
It was
Bobby
close,
Rainey.
but I think I needed a touchdown.
Yeah, I was just saying, Rainey had a good week. He was just missing that touchdown that would have
Yeah.
given you your prediction.
Yeah, so follow us all on Twitter, by the way, at AdamNextLevel, at SRichards31, and at JoeyWebb32. But anyway, back to Tannehill. He plays at Detroit. They've only given up 9 touchdowns all year and about 235 a game. They're also coming off a bye. I think he comes back down to earth this week, guys. I just think there's better options out there, like Carson Palmer and other guys like that. So, Joe, we'll start with you. What do you think about Tannehill this week?
I agree. This week, I would not feel comfortable putting in my lineup. The one thing Tannehill does do that helps is he does actually get a lot of rushing yards.
Yes.
Which you don't realize. You don't really think of him as a rushing quarterback, but maybe he helps you out there. But I agree. Against Detroit, I don't see him doing as well. I think long term, I think Tannehill's a guy like a couple of the other guys we mentioned earlier to keep on your radar for streaming. But this week, I think there are better options out there, including I mentioned earlier Kyle Orton.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that the Miami Dolphins are the national media's overreaction team of the week. They beat the Chargers last week 37-0. So I'm not excited as most everybody else is going to be on Tannehill, and I would pump the brakes. He's kind of a matchup guy for me as far as quarterbacks go, and he's probably not going to be too high on the matchup in the rankings chart when that comes out, probably on Thursday on Next Level website.
NextLevelRadioOnline.com.
NextLevelRadioOnline.com. My guy was Mike Evans. They're playing Atlanta. It's even a good matchup this week, but I just think, I don't know, rookie wide receivers are hard to trust for me. And with Vincent Jackson on the other side, it could probably just as easily be his turn this week instead of Mike Evans' turn, so I think that's he's going to be a tough guy to trust. I don't know. The quarterback's not that good either, so and the O-line isn't all that good, so I think last week that he was just exploiting a matchup because Vincent Jackson saw Joe Hayden, so that won't be the case again this week, and I think Vincent Jackson will have more of a chance to go off, and as a result that drops Mike Evans' value a little bit.
Yeah, I would agree. And Josh McCown's coming back this week. I'm not sure what that means for either receiver, but I would agree. I don't know that you can rely on Mike Evans, but you might have to start him. I think he's just maybe like a wide receiver 3 this week. Joe?
Yeah, I was all ready to disagree with you when I read our notes originally, and then I read that that Glennon was pulled, and I'll be honest, I think Glennon was not playing that poorly, and even if he was, I just think he's better than McCown. So I was ready to disagree with you, but because of the quarterback situation, I'm going to agree with you. I just don't think you can trust either guy right now, with McCown being their quarterback.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and Joe, you have one of the Brits.
My guy, I put Alan Hearns in there. I think this was maybe our week 1 don't buy the hype guide when he went off crazy against the Eagles in week 1. And then he's really been almost nowhere. And then last week he puts up a huge game. I think every once in a while you're going to see a big game from Alan Hearns, but you're never going to know when that is. He plays against Dallas in London. So if he's a free agent, let another owner waste a roster spot. There's another guy you can go out and get. I just would not trust him at all.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't think I've ever been so sure of you both agreeing with me than this pick that I just made.
For every reason you said, I agree.
You got that right.
So let's move on. Steve, you want to go over this week's waiver wire pickups real quick, since this is a Tuesday and maybe you're listening to the podcast before the waivers go off?
Yeah, absolutely, and especially with the 4 or 5 teams on bye, 6 teams on bye this week. So just as far as waiver wire pickups, again, your league could be different, but percentage owned, we try to shoot for under 50% here. Charles Sims out in Tampa Bay, the running back who didn't play last week when he was supposed to, but he's supposed to play again this week. Mark Sanchez at the quarterback position. I know Joe is going to disagree, but I think he could have a chance to not miss a beat in the Eagles offense. And we talked a little bit about Martavis Bryant, who is still under 50%, but like I said, I believed in him a little bit earlier, and now he's scoring more touchdowns. So where are you guys at on, I guess the question is, to play a game a little bit here, is what waiver position would you be at to use your waiver on Charles Sims, Mark Sanchez or Martavis Bryant.
I think it all depends on your needs on your team. I
tried to pick different positions, like one at each position.
Yeah, I think last week, and I had Oliver, Ball, and Charles. So I'm in desperate need of a second running back at this point. So last week I actually used a waiver claim on Charles Sims when I heard they were taking him off IR. I didn't plan on playing him. But I just think maybe in a couple weeks you could see him take over. So for him, if you need a second running back, I have no problem using a number 1 waiver wire claim. I just think a lot of you can move up pretty quickly because actually already this week I'm at number 5 out of 12. So I mean I moved up really quickly just using that. So if I need a running back for sure, Sanchez. Normally I would not, but again I'm using my. I think I would have to use my waiver claim on him. I'm not sure, but it depends what you need. So, if you got a guy on a bye, or if you had Nick Foles and you don't have a good backup, then sure, go right ahead. Because I do think he still puts up some good numbers. I think you get a solid 18 points from him week in and week out. And then Martavis Bryant, if you need a good wide receiver 2 or 3, which I think wide receivers are pretty easy to come by. Just because there's so many of them. But if I'm in the back half of my league, I'd use a waiver wire pick on him. So, Joe, let's get your opinion.
I love the Charles Sims. I like him going long term. I just don't know. We don't know what he's going to do. He's a rookie. He's never played in a game yet. But I'm a big believer in the roster as many running backs as you possibly can, and just hope that a couple of them pay off like a lottery ticket. So. I actually picked him up in a league last week, and I have no problem sitting him on my bench and just hoping that when the playoffs come around, he may be the number 1 guy down there. And if he's not, that's okay because there's really no one else out there. So I like that. My only reason I'm down on Sanchez is I agree that I don't think he's going to miss a beat, but I don't think he's really any better than Foles. I think he's a career quarterback that has thrown, I think, 1 interception more than he's thrown touchdowns. Granted, that was in New York with not a lot of talent around him. I think he's going to do fine football-wise for the Eagles. I think they can win with him. But fantasy-wise, I think that there's other quarterbacks, and I don't think his ceiling as high as some of them. But I think he's a safe pick.
I will say go ahead if you want to finish.
No, I was going to say I think he's a safe pick. I don't think he's going to ever, because it's a Chip Kelly offense, throw up a single-digit score like a Joe Flacco will some weeks. But I also don't think he's going to be a 30-point guy like the way Tannehill was a week ago.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I compare him kind of to, and not talent-wise at all, but fantasy-wise, to Jay Cutler, where he's going to turn the ball over a decent amount, but he's also going to have a decent amount of touchdowns. And he actually might have more rushing yards than Foles would, because I mean Foles is just so slow, and the opportunity is there a lot in that offense. So I actually think Sanchez could get you like 10, maybe even 20 rushing yards too every once in a while.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Yeah, we'll see. I hope I'm wrong on that. I hope he's a great fantasy quarterback, because if he is, it probably means it's good for the Eagles. But I just think there's a couple other quarterbacks I think I'd rather have at this point, but we'll see. And Martavis Bryant, I think obviously if you didn't pick him up. If you listened to me last week and you didn't pick him up and somebody else did, I apologize. But if you listened to Steve and you got him, good for you. If he's available still in your league, I think you have to pick him up. I think of the 3 of those, like Adam said, it's depending on your need. But I think he's the one guy that you can almost, of those 3, that is going to play a factor going down the road. So he'd be my number 1 pickup this week.
Steve?
Yeah, just a small ad. He's at 22% in ESPN leagues. And Ryan Matthews is under 50%. So, wow. I mean, if you are listening to this before your waivers go off and Ryan Matthews is available, make him number 1.
Yeah,
I would think.
Yeah, I would agree.
For sure. I don't know. I'm a little bit surprised that Ryan Matthews is under 50% somewhere. So, I would just check and make sure, because if you can get him, then go get him.
Steve, what do you think about those 3 guys?
I think that I like Sanchez a lot. I don't know why, but I guess I do. I just think that I think the offense works, and I think it's a system offense, and I think it's just going to work. And I like what you said about rushing. They crashed really hard on McCoy when they ran those read options because Foles can't run a lick. But Sanchez can, so he might be able to make people pay if they're going to continue to crash on McCoy like that. I guess if I would rank them, I would go. Again, it depends on who you want, and what you need on your team. But I would probably go Sims, and then Bryant, and then Sanchez, just as far as positional rankings go. But I like all of them. If you can get any of them, and that's your positional need, I think you could use a pretty high waiver on any of them, I think.
I'd agree with that. So we got take your pick and dig it or ditch it left. We'll go take your pick. There's only 2, so I think we might know Joe's answer to this first one. Take your pick, Jamal Charles or Buffalo's defense. Buffalo's only giving up 92 yards per game and 3 touchdowns all season. In the 6 games Charles has played fully, he had one where he didn't play the entire game. He has 7 total touchdowns, 5 rushing touchdowns, 2 receiving touchdowns, and an average of 72 yards per game. So take your pick. Who gets the better of this matchup? Steve, we'll start with you because I think we know Joe's answer.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that I'm thinking about this too long because I want to say Jamal Charles right away. So I guess since first instinct, I'll go with the C method on a test, and just the first instinct will be Jamal Charles.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna take Jamal Charles too. I don't think you'll see him get a ton of yards. I think maybe about 60 or 70 is all you might see, but I do think he gets into the end zone again and gets you that 12 to 15 point range. Joe, do I have to ask you?
You do not.
Okay.
I'll take Buffalo.
Matthew Stafford with Megatron or Miami's defense. Take your pick. Miami has been giving up just 215 yards per game and 1.5 touchdowns per game. Obviously, those stats are probably a little inflated from last week's game against the Chargers, but Stafford had 346 yards and 2 touchdowns week 1 with healthy Calvin Johnson. So, Joe, we'll start with you this time. Take your pick. Stafford getting good numbers with Megatron back in the lineup, or Miami defense still getting the better of him?
I think Stafford. I'll take Stafford and Megatron. I think the Miami defense is going to they're still on a high. They're smelling themselves a little bit after last week's game against the San Diego Chargers, so I'll take Stafford.
Steve?
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think Stafford, with his full complement of weapons, I wouldn't count out Golden Tate either. Having weapons on both sides, I think Stafford against that Miami defense is a Stafford win out.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think Golden Tate does have a good game.
Since we're talking about this game, I'm sorry, Adam.
No, go ahead.
Since we're talking about this game, I was interested. I was going to ask you guys off air, but this may be an interesting question for our listeners. I was offered a trade, Golden Tate for Lamar Miller, straight up. I want to get your thoughts on it.
Who would you be getting?
I would be getting Golden Tate, giving up Lamar Miller.
Who's your other running backs?
I have Rashad Jennings waiting to come back, Andre Ellington, and Jeremy Hill. So my biggest concern is that I'd be giving up a lot of depth. And then my receivers would end up being Dez Bryant, Macklin, and then I'd put Golden Tate as my flex.
I would keep Miller.
Okay.
I think I might keep Miller too. I think he's supposed to play, right?
He is. He practiced. He actually practiced today.
Yeah. So you never know. I think with Golden Tate, as far as when Calvin Johnson comes back, they might just throw at Calvin Johnson 15 times on Sunday just because he's back. Yep.
That's what I was thinking. So it's good to hear.
Not to trade block that other guy, but yeah.
All right.
But yeah, like you guys said, I actually thought about putting Stafford on my low list initially, and then I'm like, oh wait, that's right, Calvin Johnson's back this week, so I'll just make it into this question. So let's go on to our last segment.
Prime Time Fantasy Football Presents. Dig it or ditch it.
Can you dig it?
Up first for Dig It or Ditch It, we got Josh McCown, digging or ditching that he's actually a fantasy option this week against the Falcons. Joe?
I dig that technically he is a fantasy option. However, I don't think he's a good one, so I'm going to ditch it.
He's also technically a human being.
Yes.
I'm going to ditch that as well, and you'll find that out in my quarterback rankings. That'll hammer that home, I think.
Yeah, I'm going to ditch it for this week. Actually, he's not. I mean, I think I'm going to dig that he's like a QB2. Because I actually think he does get you maybe like 17 points, which isn't terrible depending on your needs. So next one, Mark Sanchez, digging or ditching. He's a QB1 against the Panthers. Joe, we'll start with you.
This is close. I could see him being a 1 in the 10, 11, 12 range. I'm gonna dig it. I'm gonna dig it, but it's gonna be close.
Steve?
Your damn Skippy, the quarterback one.
I'm digging it as well.
It is close.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is close, but I think I'll probably have him around 11, and it'll be solidly as 11.
Yeah.
I can't think of 12 guys that I would rather have than him this week.
Right. How about rest of the season, Steve? Digging or ditching him as a QB1 the rest of the year?
What is Foles, 6 to 8 weeks? Does that put him out for the whole rest of the fantasy season, I
Pretty
guess?
much, yeah.
I think 6 weeks would put him out with like 2 games left, and 8 weeks puts him out the whole year.
Yeah.
Oh, that's tough because who's out this week? Luck and Brady are out this week.
Well, I'm talking the rest of the year.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Oh, okay.
if I have him at 11 this week, and then Luck, Brady, and Rivers are out this week, that kind of drops him down to. I'm not going to put him ahead of any of those guys.
It's a valid point.
Yeah, I will firmly ditch that rest of the year QB1.
Yeah, he's a fringer, and I don't know that he's probably a stream guy, which I guess doesn't make him a QB1 for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I think I might ditch it as well. I think he's, like you said, a fringer. Maybe like a 13, 12, somewhere around there. Let's move on. Mark Ingram, digging or ditching over 15 points against the 49ers this week. Steve?
That's a lot. Under. Barely.
So ditching. Okay, Joe?
Ditch.
I'll dig it just because I think they're giving him the workload, and like I said earlier, they seem to be running the ball a lot more when it's closer to the goal line. So, 90 yards and a touchdown will give you that, and I think he can do that.
Yeah, I'm going to dig it as well. He could get 2 touchdowns and 30 rushing yards and get 15 points. Jeremy Hill over 15 points as well versus the Browns. Joe, we'll start with you this time. Digging or ditching that?
I'm digging it. I don't do the running back rankings, but if I did, he'd probably be a top 5 guy for me this week.
I'm going to put him at number 6 just because you said
Right.
that. Steve?
I dig it as well. Yeah, especially if Gio doesn't play, which I don't think he is, so
Yeah.
dig it for sure.
Yeah, Browns are bad against the run, so I'm going to dig it as well. This is an interesting one. Mikel Rivera, however you pronounce his first name, a key piece for the Raiders, according to, this was off of Roto World. So you guys digging or ditching that? Joe?
Ditch it.
Steve?
I don't. Do they have any key pieces? Is this fantasy relevant? I don't. I ditch it because I don't know what that means for fantasy purposes.
I might dig it depending who your wide or your tight ends are.
I looked for a tight end for about 45 minutes today, by the way, and I couldn't find a thing.
I mean, he had 11 targets last week. That could just be a catch up type of thing, but he had 9 the week before that. So I think he's a guy to keep an eye on. He's been getting the targets.
I would rather pick up Tony Gonzalez in the hopes that he somehow comes out of retirement to play this weekend over Rivera.
He might be eating some more crow in a few weeks.
Make sure you recorded that. I'm just saying for this week.
I actually think he can be, in general, he can be a decent tight end.
I actually like Derek Carr, so why not? But I'm still going to ditch it.
All right, next one. Digging or ditching that Rainey this week is still the top back in Tampa Bay. Steve.
I will ditch that because I believe Charles Sims will be coming back. But if he doesn't, then yeah, I think Rainey's good when he's the only guy. But when he's not the only guy, he kind of falls by the wayside.
Yeah, I think Sims is supposed to play. I'm going to actually still dig it, though, just for this week. I think he gets more touches, but I think in a couple weeks it's going to change. Joe?
I dig it. I say the exact same thing. I dig it this week, and depending on how Sims looks this week, it could change. Long term, I may ditch this, but this week I'll dig it.
All right, and the final question of the night, the all-important. Dig or ditch, pick up Adrian Peterson. Joe?
Dig it. If you are going into your fantasy playoffs in the next few weeks and you have a shot to have Adrian Peterson on your lineup, even if you don't know if he's going to play, you have to pick him up right now.
Steve?
You have to.
Dig it all the way to China, baby.
I'm also going to dig it. I agree. So that does it for week number 10. Make sure you check out our Facebook, facebook.com/nextlevelradio online. Twitter is at NXT Level Radio. You can tweet us your questions, #PTFF, or email them to primetime@nextlevelradioonline.com. That's PRIMETIME @nextlevelradioonline.com. Follow all of us on Twitter. Joe is at JoeyWebb32, Steve at SRichards31. I am at Adam Next Level. Maybe we'll do some bold predictions again on Twitter if you follow us. Also, go to nextlevelradioonline.com. Check out our rankings. Stream all old shows, and including the Showcast, which is a weekly show with some interviews. Subscribe on iTunes. Just search for Next Level Radio. And for us, you'd have to search for Primetime Fantasy Football. I think that is it. Check out Steve's blog, stevenrichards.net. Steve, do you have anything to add before we get going?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay. Joe, anything to add before we get going?
No, just try to hit us up on Twitter on game day. Steve, Adam, and I are normally pretty active on there on game day, so tweet us your questions. We'll try to get back to you.
Yeah, tell your friends. All right, well, that wraps it up for week number 10. We will see you for week number 11. Good luck this week.
It's like